This year is the most greedy and most insane in the history of the gaming industry. Now, if you don't have enough money, then you are not allowed to play new games. This year has finally turned gaming into a hobby for the rich, like golf, tennis, or themed parties on islands. Microsoft raises prices several times a year, Nintendo continues to enrich itself through unhealthy competition, publishers sell AAA games at inflated prices, corporations sell us revolutionary technologies that make no sense, and Starbucks continues to exist. We have ended up in the worst possible timeline. This year has seen so many events and strange decisions from gaming companies that I decided to finally get to the bottom of the situation. How an ordinary hobby turned into a luxury. Who is primarily to blame for this? And most importantly, what does the future hold for us? This isn't about my experience as a gamer, but I'm starting with Nintendo. This totalitarian company whose image is based on a guy with a famous mustache has shown how far you can go when your audience is used to trusting your brand. On the day that I'm writing this script, Pokemon Legends ZA is supposed to be released, which by the way cost $70 and has graphics that look like this. And I understand that maybe the Switch 2 isn't as advanced as other consoles in terms of power, but how can you sell a mobile game for the price of a AAA game? Come on. Although it would probably be more accurate to ask, who is buying this? However, that's not even the most absurd thing. The company announced that DLC for Pokemon Legends ZA even before the game's release, which cost 30 times more than it should, namely $30. That means that the full version of the game for Switch 2 cost $100. What the fuck? In addition, some of the content from this DLC is only available with an active Nintendo Switch Online subscription, which means that even the basic mechanics of the series are now tied to monthly payments. And honestly, I don't even know what could be more absurd than selling a game at a AAA price point with 18-year-old graphics. It's literally selling an 18-year-old game, which Nintendo has also done. The re-release of Super Mario Galaxy, which came out in 2007, by the way, is selling for $70 on Switch 2, with no new content, just updated resolution. But, you know, Nintendo at least doesn't pretend that it's doing this because of difficult times. We all know how greedy they are, and they know that we all know how greedy they are. But this situation with another gaming giant is more ambiguous, because Microsoft is trying to justify itself, and quite pointlessly. In May, Xbox prices rose. Series S from $300 to $380, Series X from $600 to $730. 5 months later, prices rose again to $400 and $800 respectively. The official reason is import tariffs, but former Blizzard president Mike Ibarra has publicly stated that this is just an excuse. Tariffs have only increased once while prices continue to rise, and when tariffs decreased, the cost somehow remained the same. And yes, maybe $800 is not that much for a console, but no, it is a lot. You can find a PS5 on eBay for the price of a year's Game Pass subscription. It looks like the next generation will probably exceed $1,000 or $20,000. Why not, bitch? Speaking of Game Pass, I won't talk about how painful this news was for the community, as everyone has already said enough about it. I would like to highlight, though, one rather subtle detail of such a significant price increase for this subscription. In fact, jokes aside, raising prices right now is a very illogical move for Microsoft. Along with the 50% price increase, they also added Ubisoft games to the subscription and announced that Black Ops 7 will also be available on the day of release. In other words, Microsoft has decided to significantly lower the average quality of games in this subscription. Logically, after that, the price should be reduced to about $1 for an 8-year subscription. But let's be serious, why should ordinary gamers once again pay for the incompetence of Xbox management? First, they buy various studios for billions of dollars, and then after their strategy obviously fails, well, they raise the prices of subscriptions and consoles for us. By the way, game prices also surprise me a little. I mean, why did the developers of Borderlands suddenly decide that their game, which looks and plays almost as the same as the previous installments, now should cost $70? Although, it does make sense considering that the budget for Borderlands 4 is twice as large as the previous installment. But even $280 million didn't help the developers release a game with normal optimization. Gearbox even postponed the release of the Switch 2 version, but I don't think Nintendo fans are very disappointed that they will have one less cartoon game. By the way, I really did not like the Gearbox CEO's reaction to criticism of his new game. First, he called a game that looks like DLC that should have been released 10 years ago a premium one. and that the people for whom Borderlands 4 was created are premium gamers. In other words, he literally said that if your PC can't handle a poorly optimized project on Unreal Engine 5, then you're not a premium gamer. What could that mean? Maybe Randy Pitchford thinks that people who still have GTX graphics cards needs to wear numbers on their clothes? But if being a premium gamer means playing bad games, then I'd rather be a regular guy who plays games for the poor, like Battlefield 6, which works well even on video cards that are 10 years old.
If you want to play the game with some of your friends, you can with this GPU. Like that's just crazy to me. What the heck, dude? Like 3 gigabytes in 2025.
Which, by the way, this cartoonish monster truck cannot boast about.
Are you sure?
But let's be fair. This is not an isolated case. Over the past 5 years, almost every major release has had serious technical problems. And the problem is not even the complexity of the technology, but rather the desire of investors to constantly release projects even if the product is not ready. And this year, the problem is most noticeable. Over the past few weeks, a bunch of important releases have come out. Under normal circumstances, each of them would have had its own moment in the spotlight, but they all came out at the same time and destroyed each other. Players simply don't have time to play. Such a density of releases kills not only sales, but also the very feeling of the event. Previously, a game would live for several months. Today, it ages in a week. And when profits are measured by the first week, any leg is perceived as a failure. That is why, even after good sales, we are seeing a decline. Over the past year, over 12,000 people in these large companies have lost their jobs. And it's not because of bad games, it's because of an economy that doesn't tolerate normal development speeds. The industry lives in its own illusion of endless growth. But the number of players, money, and time are limited. To maintain profits, companies add new layers of monetization. Players are becoming more cautious, pre-orders are falling, with most waiting for discounts or stable patches. And for an industry that lives by the principle of success in the first week, well, this is a deadly trend. Without instant profits, the system doesn't work. And the more the companies push, the faster the audience shrinks. And to compensate for this loss of instant sales, they simply change the rules of game ownership. Publishers no longer want to sell a product, they want to sell access. And when this logic becomes the norm, game design adapts to it. The goal is not to make it interesting, but to make it endless so that the user pays constantly. The modern gamer has at least 3 subscriptions: an online console service, cloud storage, Game Pass or similar, and if they are a premium gamer, they also have a subscription to a service that sends them a box of crap every single month. And to that, all kinds of DLC, deluxe editions, and various cosmetics. The total monthly cost is often more than subscriptions to Netflix, Spotify, and several other services combined. But unlike those, you don't get stable content, just temporary permission to use the game. Wait, what? Yes, fucking DRAM or digital rights management. It's a set of technical restrictions that determine how you can use the game you bought, and this shit is in every single modern game. DRM checks if you have the right to launch the game, ties the game to your account, and requires a constant online connection, even if it's a single player game. If the server is shut down or your account is blocked, you lose access, even though you already paid for it. Essentially, you're not buying the game, but permission to play it while the servers are up and running. But the funny thing here is that these checks don't hurt pirates, but those who pay. Illegal copy often runs slower because it goes through a bunch of checks. The pirated versions doesn't have this. It literally turns out that an honest user has more problems than someone who hasn't paid. All of this leads to a simple conclusion. AAA is not dying because of technology or genres, it is dying because of excess, pace, and overconfidence. And I want to tell you a story that I think will make you think. In the 16th century, the Portuguese only made wine for wealthy families. Complex blends, long aging, and a status symbol. Yes, this is wine. But when they lost their colonies, those same wines began to be sold diluted, cheaper, and for the mass market. After a few decades, no one remembered how the original, real wine was supposed to taste. Fuck. What did I just say?